Hi there, welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, and where the content is free. It's episode 164 of the flagship show. We're coming to you on the Monday night instead of the usual Sunday because of the way of Christmas has fallen and all that kind of a thing. As I say every week, guys, it's not just the pod we have here at Gersnet. We've got the website. You'll find articles and stuff on there. There's a history archive, forums, all that kind of stuff, so get yourself on it. If you like what we do here at Gersnet, the pod and all the other stuff, put the word out there on social media. Let people know that we're here and what we're doing. I think we're approaching, or may have just breached the 5,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So that's great. So if you can keep that going. It's the last show of the year for... we didn't expect it to be the last show of the year, but things developed as they do. We'll talk about that, no doubt, about the SPFL and various clubs bending the spirit, shall we say, of sporting integrity. But we'll come on to that. So we'll have a look at the St Mirren game, have a wee look at some of the stuff that's been going on in the background with the COVID stuff and all that kind of stuff, and the winter break being moved. Also have a wee look at maybe some comings and goings in January. And we'll have a wee look at the year, because it's the last one of the year, as I said. And we'll have a wee look at... It was a good year for Rangers, but also, quite a sad year as well in other respects as well. So we'll have a wee look at that. My guests tonight, I've got Alex Anderson and Dougie. Alex, how are you? Did you have a nice Christmas? Did Santa get you everything you wanted?
He did, sir. Yes. Apart from the fixture list going ahead as it was supposed to go ahead, you know what I mean? But we'll not get into that too early. Mate, Merry Christmas to yourself. Merry Christmas to Dougie. And thank you on comms there, and all our viewers and listeners. Nice to see the Gers 6 points clear as we come to the end of the year. And I was just thinking there, looking at myself, I'd say the camera adds 10 stone, but we both know that's not true. I'm not meaning to do down the severity of Omicron, but I think if Professor Chris Whitty wants a kind of visual aid for exponential growth, he could just get me on. See what, a day on the turkey and then another day on all the trimmings does for you. I was fat enough to start with, mate, but then the last couple of days it's just
I was actually quite sensible, and as you know, I've adopted a dog. I was out for an 11k walk today. 11k I walked today. So I must have lost about 5 stone, you know what I mean? Because I did have it to lose. So I did notice my belt when I came back for the walk. I was getting a wee notch further up. So yeah, the health benefits of having a dog. I quite enjoying it. I've also got Dougie, who's looking very festive there with his Rangers Santa hat on. Did you have a good Christmas, Dougie?
I did, yeah. Thanks very much, Colin. All about the kids, 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, so it was a bit mental with the excitement of the Barbie Dream House being opened. But yeah, Merry Christmas to you, gents, and Merry Christmas to all the listeners. I've got my Santa hat on, which has been a tradition for many years to wear at Ibrox on Boxing Day. And I've got a wee Santa glass with red wine in it. So Merry Christmas, everyone.
Well, I'm on the Moretti. That looks like a bottle of wine you're on there, Alex. What's that you've got?
It's a Paulaner.
All right, okay. Just the way you held up, it did actually look like a bottle of wine. I thought he's taking us a bit far.
It's my QVC hand model days. It's very I'm making everything look much bigger than it is. You know what I mean? As my wife will tell you. Right, on we go, boys.
Hey, before we get started, I need to know, because I experienced this as a dad when they were a bit younger. Were you up to like 5 a.m, Dougie, building stuff?
No, I got to 1. I got to 1
no, that's not bad.
Yeah. The dream house, I very kind of like strategically started building it a couple of days before and hid it in the garage. There was a day during the week that the eldest one said to me, "Can I get my scooter out the garage?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. We're not going in that garage." And how do you explain to your child the reason why you can't go into the garage is because your Christmas presents are in there and you'd be able to see them all?
You should have just said it's riddled with Omicron. We can't go in the garage. You know what I mean? It's out of bounds. It's full of the COVID. It's mad with the COVID.
But no, I was saying earlier on beforehand that I get 3 hours sleep because the little one was then awake during the night as well. So Christmas Day was exhausting trying to get through it. But don't worry, I powered through.
I've been there.
Red wine and beer.
I've been there. I remember one year I had to build a go-kart, very 70s, you know what I mean, for my boy. And I was up till honestly God, 5 a.m. There was a couple of bits I just couldn't get it to go on, nuts and bolts and all that kind of stuff. And I actually woke my wife up at 5 o'clock, raging, you're going to have to come down and give me a hand with this because I can't do it. You know what I mean? I'm getting stressed out there up in 2 hours. We managed to get it finished, got it all done. And I kid you not, he was on it about 20 minutes. and then it went in his nana's shed, and it was never seen or heard of again. And I'm not bitter for the experience at all. Not absolutely not. It's all good. It's all fine. Right, let's go on to the yesterday's game. Ibrox, only 500 fans allowed in, as we know, due to the announcement through the week with the COVID stuff and restrictions being re-implemented in certain areas, and that's something we'll discuss later on. But I'll come to you first. I mean, I had issues. Guess what? I had issues with Rangers TV yesterday, so I missed huge chunks of the first half. I'm getting my stream okay, but when I'm trying to cast it to my TV, it cuts out. And it's only the app that does that. You know what I mean? Every other app, when I'm casting to my TV, it works fine. Just kept on cutting out. And after about 25 minutes, half an hour, I had a couple of mates in. We sat and watched it on the laptop. And then it wasn't quite so bad in the second half. You know, we got maybe 20 minutes, and then it started buffering again. But it wasn't an enjoyable watching experience for myself. I missed huge chunks of the game. But what I did see, is comfortable a victory, as you'll see, a really easy win. And you would argue we should have won by more. I mean, it was one-way traffic.
And what we actually looked like, Colin, was champions in the middle, the process of retaining our title. We were absolutely magnificent in terms of, this would be one of the games in your 9 in a row videos, you know, the VHS days where you just kind of, this would be the moment you just kind of, that's that game against St Mirren, we won 2-0, right, on to the big one, the next one. We looked like, again, I'm getting one themed, I'm going to sound like an obsessive here, but we looked like we were just ready to go to our two biggest away venues, the two biggest kind of fixtures of any kind of festive period. We're going to go to Pittodrie, we're going to go to Parkhead and find Fettle. We looked almost like we were containing the goals. We're going to spread them across the season as a whole, with a few goals left up our sleeve for Aberdeen on Wednesday night and for Parkhead on Sunday. We also looked like a team that had just had a first full week off in ages, and the manager, as he said himself, hadn't he been telling the players what he wanted them to do, he'd had a chance to actually show them up at Auchenhowie on the training field what he wanted them to do. Joe Aribo was just monstering the whole game. We're back to, we've got our full-backs get assists for both the goals. Barisic is back to the forensic cross, and Tav's, just as big an attacking threat as anybody else in that park. You'd Joe Aribo's got a header contribution to both goals, and you get Alfie's slapping the ball into the back of the net in both goals as well, even though the first one wasn't his. There's a bit in the game where Joe Aribo was down in what would be, I think, left back position, down at the corner flag between the main stand and the Copeland. And he's turned the guy inside out, turned and pinged a ball up the wing that put us through and goal again. It was easy. But this was a St Mirren team that's like 5 first-team players better off than they were against Celtic. Yeah. 2 points off Celtic all night. We don't want to forget that. And I think the other thing that showed for me yesterday was, again, how Gio responds to the opposition. Jim Goodwin's making big noises about how he's just going to park the bus. I like Jim Goodwin, and I do think he's a, I didn't like him as a player because he was a liability. He's got that, and he's got that on his part just now with the fella Alan Power. He's going to put somebody in hospital while smiling if he's not careful. But as a manager, I think he's quite upfront, quite an honest guy, quite respectful in a way that managers of other clubs aren't. But he said he was going to park the bus yesterday, and we respected that. We had no choice for it. But again, you saw Gio just changing things to accommodate that, to accommodate what the opposition were going to do. And I thought, again, we just looked like we're on our game, we're in the zone, we're ready to go, and things have been cut short. I can't get away from it. I cannot get away from what has happened with the schedule, because Rangers look like they're absolutely ready to rock.
Yeah, I mean, I know we'll come on to talk about it later on, but there was huge sort of a lot of talk on social media and Twitter and all that kind of stuff at the beginning of December, certainly for Celtic fans, going, we'll see how good they are, look at their fixtures in December. And it seems to me that after we've won so many, they've went, well, actually, we don't want to play this game anymore. Can we get this knocked back until we get some new players in? Yeah, play the game. I mean, we come up through liquidation, after liquidation, we come up through the leagues. We knew it was going to happen to us when we come back into the top flight, because we were, years behind in terms of infrastructure and whatever.
We took those, 5-0 doings at Parkhead, 5-1 at Ibrox. They're beating us 4-0 in the Scottish Cup semi-final. We had to go through all that because we wanted to play football. We wanted to get back to playing football. We've got a team here, a club who doesn't seem to want to play it the same way as everybody else. They want to kind of change the subject when things start getting. And I don't know if it's the fact that they had those 4 consecutive trebles, which a magnificent achievement. It doesn't matter who's, it's not their fault that the opposition's weakened. But they've got a level of success that no other Scottish clubs had in a sustained kind of period, a kind of brief period of time. And I don't know if they've just got too used to lauding it or whatever, and they don't actually know how to cope with a team who just takes that on the chin, a club that just takes that on the chin and just kind of comes back at them. We're looking at, I think it's not just a case of Celtic are wanting to stop playing us. They don't want to play us when we're on form and they've got a lot of injuries. We've got plenty of injuries as well. I don't think it's just even about that. I think it's also a kind of rewriting of history almost. It's almost there's a kind of a subtext here that playing football in empty stadiums, i.e. winning a league title in empty stadiums, doesn't really count. We played them 3 times at home last season at Ibrox. And so if there's a disadvantage playing at home, suddenly it seems to be a disadvantage playing at home if your home stadium's empty. Yeah. Well, we did it 3 times yesterday last season in Old Firm games. We won a lot of them.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. I would actually say, no, I would agree with it, but I would disagree with what the argument is. The whole argument last season that home advantage was lost because stadiums were empty. You know what I mean?
It's one of the things that it works both ways. I mean, we've had it, we've had it more often playing at home, Old Firm games without a crowd there. I'm doing that thing. I'm spluttering. I'm going to start losing because
that's fine. We'll come on to that. We
were going to talk. We were trying to get a wee pod out there last week before Christmas, kind of Christmas Eve-ish. We just thought, no, it's not worth it because folk have got other things to do. And I think I've actually it's been stored up in me since then, so I can hardly talk about the St Mirren game. I come downstairs at half. I'm watching the laptop here yesterday. I come downstairs at half time. My wife's seen the score. She's seen we're winning 2-0. She's like, "Good game." I'm going, "No, it isn't, because they don't want to play us now because Joe Aribo's absolutely buzzing. He's not going to get it." She's like, I don't know anymore how to work out when you're going to be in a good mood. But it's no, I mean, there is reasons, right? We'll talk, we'll come back.
We'll come back to it. Let's focus on St Mirren. Yeah. Dougie, I mean, to sort of emphasise that, I was having a look at the stats after the game. 77% possession, 25 shots compared to St Mirren's 1, 7 corners compared to St Mirren 1. I mean, everything about it. As I said earlier on, the most disappointing thing is that we didn't win by more. You know what I mean? It's as one-sided as a game without there being a huge scoreline as I think I can remember seeing.
Yeah, Colin, we were excellent. I think Alex touched on it. We were excellent against St Mirren. You've quoted some stats. I've got some stats since Gio came in. We've played 9. We've won 8. We've drew 1. And that was in a nothing game against Leon. We've obviously lost 0. League won 7 out of 7. League points won 21 out of 1. Scored 17. Conceded 2. Clean sheets 7. But I think that the 2 stats that really strike for me are goals per game is 1.88 and conceded per game is 0.22. And I think the St Mirren game is probably testament to exactly what a Gio team looks like. We never look like conceding. The 0 is very important to Gio, and I think everyone spoke about how solid we were at the back last season. I think we're seen as being back to our solid best again under Gio. But I think my frustration was about us not going on and scoring more goals. At the beginning of the game, we were 3 goals behind Celtic in goal difference. I seen St Mirren as a huge opportunity for going scores. But I look at that 1.8 goals per game. What you see in the team is sees the professional, and I think it's 2-0 probably typical type of side just now that you see expect a Gio fan of Rangers.
You seem to be cutting out a bit, Dougie. Is it the same with you, Alex? Is he cutting out? Yeah, you're cutting out a wee bit. So I'll come to Alex now and let Dougie get that sorted. I mean, looking at the sort of the players that had a major impact on the game, Scott Wright back into the team, got his goal, and he's a player that you know, when he first arrived, Scott Wright, I thought he made a really a big impact, really impressive. He started the season well. That goal against Livingston on the opening day of the season was an absolute peach, and I thought at that point, you know, there's a chance this boy's going to kick on and start to, you know, get game time and starts and stuff like that. And it hasn't quite happened for him. And he's sort of, certainly under Gerrard, it felt like he was going the other way. You know, he was getting less game time and not coming in as much. Seems to me that Gio rates him, you know, and is trying to get him game time. And I thought he played well yesterday. He took his goal well. You know, a good header, you know, a good leap at the back post for the goal.
Which is not the kind of goal you're expecting Scott Wright to score. So it was lovely to see that he's got that in his armoury. I think Gio seems to have started off his tenure as manager by just getting the kind of accepted first team squad, as many of them, the first 11 out and playing, and you're starting to wonder, is Scott Wright going to get a shout? So it's been nice to see him coming in, and as you say, he's only coming in because he's doing well. Last week, I think it was maybe just kind of almost by default against Dundee United. We could have a separate pod about Yanis Hadji, you know, discussing the Yanis Hadji situation, what we like from Yanis, what we think is good at, what we think is bad at. But I think he was getting, as we all know, he was getting some real stick. Not really voluble last Saturday, Hadji against Dundee United, but he wasn't doing what people wanted him to do. He wasn't having the best of touches, you know, he wasn't having the best of games. I still think he was doing a lot of things really right, and he gets kind of misunderstood at times. But I think when Scott Wright come on and he gave people what they, I think it's a confusion because Yanis Hadji plays on the right wing. It's no, Gio's not for a second trying to say that Yanis Hadji is a stereotypical winger, as in he's pacey or whatever. I think people can misunderstand how he's used. But when Scott Wright comes on and plays wide right, in Hadji's place, everybody's like, aye, that's what I'm expecting to see. You know, when he's piling
he's a wee bit more direct, I think.
Yeah, he's more direct and he's more pacey as well, mate. That's what people love. You know, people can't help wanting to see that going up the wing, even though it might not always be the only way to use the wing. But he was fantastic yesterday, and he was getting past players really in kind of electric fashion. That's him get 2 goals under Gio. I think he had 2 goals under Stevie Jenks, scored against St Johnstone last season up at McDermott, that midweek game just after we'd won the league and all that, just before we played St Johnstone in the Cup. I think he scored in that game, a kind of nothing match. And as you say, he's got that one, the first game of the season against Livy, a lovely goal. But yesterday he had Tanzer on toast. You know, he scored against Lyon as well. Away to Lyon, so it's a kind of classier opponent, a kind of higher level, a European group match. Bit of deflection that night, but you know, we'll take it and he'll take it.
They all count.
Aye, absolutely, mate.
And it was his goal. You know, it was on target.
What else was he trying to do? He was trying to score, and it went in. So that'll do for me. And I thought yesterday he tortured Tanzer, took him to pieces, and his anticipation, his touch as well. He had the wee chance in the second half where he kind of takes the ball off a Rebo and glides and takes it away from the fella, and he's unlucky. He comes back off the post, the far post, but he was a step ahead, you know, of a St Mirren team, as I say, who obviously are weakened, but still had a lot more first team players back in the squad yesterday. It wasn't all a bunch of young boys yesterday.
Well, I did hear a wee rumour about that. I did hear, you know, child labour laws meant that St Mirren couldn't field the same team as it fielded against Celtic. I might be wrong, but that's what I've heard.
If we're going to start getting into the jokes about last Wednesday night, we'll be, you know, a nightmare.
Did you see the photograph of the subs? My son sent me a photograph of the St Mirren subs on. I was like, no way is that their subs? And it was. It looked like the ball boys, you know what I mean? One of them never even had a name in the back of his shirt.
A guy my age, like guys in their 30s, can look too young, but that was absolutely frightening. My favourite was that Tom Rogic got a booking for telling one of the midfielders that Santa wasn't real.
A few of them failed the drugs test because they had Calpol in the system.
Yesterday the worry was that stuff was going to come back and bite us in the arse because we had 2 or 3 days of laughing at St Mirren. But Scott Wright was a big part of making sure that didn't happen. And the one thing I would say, Colin, that I also thought was a bonus was the way he linked up with Alfie and Aribo in particular. I know they're good players anyway, but there was an understanding there. You could see they were anticipating. There was a bit in the second half, I think Alfie knocks the ball round, and you can at first you're thinking, where's that going to? But he knows Scott Wright is going to beat the fella ahead of him. And Scott Wright gets onto it. And Aribo also was reading him really well for that chance where he ends up hitting the post. He looks like he's a real part of the team now. And look, we're looking at the kind of how many players we might be missing come Groundhog Day, 2nd of February. We might need Scott Wright to be on the right hand side and having a good game. That might be the day or the night he totally announces himself.
Dougie, on to Morelos, you know, second goal, and you know, I think it's his 6th goal in 8 games under Gio. And I think he looks a bit trimmer. He certainly looks more mobile. He's more about the pitch than he used to be. And I also think positionally, he seems to be in the right places now. That's something that used to frustrate me about him was, when the ball was going into the box, and maybe it was the way he's been asked to play under Gerrard. He used to come deep a lot. But whenever the ball was coming into the box, you're like, where's our striker? You know what I mean? And I do think he was carrying a wee bit of weight, under Gerrard. But then at the moment, he's coming close to being the sort of the Morelos for sort of that first season that Gerrard arrived when he was scoring every week. He just such a handful of players, such a handful as a player, sorry. And it's great to see. It's great to see that this guy who, it frustrates me, and I think he frustrates a lot of Rangers supporters. But it's great when he's in this kind of form because that the people that he frustrates more is the opposition. They start to really hate him, and I mean they hate him anyway, but they hate him even more when he's scoring goals. And it's great to see him in that form again and being hungry again.
Yeah, hopefully my technical issues have been resolved with an old pair of headphones, Colin.
Yeah, you sound a lot better, Dougie.
I mean, you just missed an absolutely brilliant point, dare I say, as well earlier on. It was a cracker. But as for Morelos, we were actually talking about Morelos on Christmas Day because his wife had posted on Instagram the picture of Alfie and his kids, and we were all speaking about he looked like the lean Morelos. I think latterly under Gerrard he did look like he was carrying a few extra pounds. I thought Morelos was brilliant. I thought he was back to, you referred to it as, close to his best. I thought he looked hungry again. He was all over the park. He had the work rate, but he was in the box at the right times. And I think that was the criticism that I had of Morelos latterly under Gerrard, is that he was dropping deeper and deeper to try and get involved in the game. And I think his movement in the final third and his position in the box is actually more testament to the way that Gio is playing football. I think under Gerrard, we became a wee bit predictable and stale, that Morelos felt the need to drop deeper to get more involved. And I think, Alex touched on it earlier on, when Jim Goodwin started referring to parking the bus, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst countered that by playing two number 10 centrally in Aribo and Hadji, as well as two out-and-out wingers. We went for it. And what that meant was then that you didn't have to have and rely on Morelos coming deep because you had other players who were able to, carry the ball and create chances for our goal scorer. And I think the word goal scorer is key for me here because, you just spoke about Morelos' records under Gio. For a player who seemingly has been off form this year, he's now the second top goal scorer in the league with 8 goals behind the Dundee United bound Tony Watt, who's on 9. But I think one of the important stats there is that Tony Watt has 0 assists against Alfredo Morelos' 4. One of the things I've said throughout...
Hold on, Dougie, hold on. Are you telling me he scored more goals than the sensation that is Kyogo?
He's actually scored the same, but he has more assists than Kyogo. He's also got 2 hamstrings.
If that boy wasn't fouled as much, he'd have scored more goals in the whole league put together. Leave that boy alone,
It's a shame for poor Kyogo, isn't it?
It's my terrible.
But the fact that Alfredo Morelos has 4 assists as well on top of the goals that he scored shows that his all-round game is improving. And we're going to talk about January soon. February is a key month for us, and I think it's February that we are going to rely on guys like Morelos really being on top form. When you're going away to places like Celtic Park, you've also got the double header against Borussia Dortmund. I really hope that Alfredo Morelos is one of the players that brings his form back into the games after the winter break that should never have been brought forward.
It's like, see, if we want to draw a line in the sand with Morelos, a sort of a low point was that game against Hibs in the semi-final. And when you look at the Morelos of the last 2 or 3 games compared to that game, it's hard to even contemplate that it's the same player. It really is, because I thought that performance against Hibs in the semi-final was borderline scandalous. I've never seen a striker look so disinterested in a game. And when you look up now, it's night and day.
I was on the podcast after the Hibs game, Colin, and I was scunnered, absolutely scunnered, but he wasn't alone. We sat here and spoke about Connor Goldson, for example, who had an absolutely shambolic game, and he also went on to have the comments post-match as well. I think you're seeing a lot of guys that are, we spoke about in the podcast, we need to see these guys roll up their sleeves and prove that they want to play for Rangers. And, Goldson is doing that. Morelos is doing that. Aribo has been absolutely sensational. Alex has spoke about it. He is a clear player of the year in Scotland. Forget Kyogo. Aribo is where it's at right now. But the player that I criticised, and I need to apologise publicly, I criticised Alan McGregor. You know, I actually used the phrase Alan McGregor could be done on the podcast after the Hibs game. And look what's happened since then. What is it, 6 clean sheets? Seven clean sheets he's had since then. Incredible form from Alan McGregor since in his press conference. I know we're going to come on to talking about the COVID situation. I don't think you'll ever see Alan McGregor put his hand up any more than what he did for that press conference. He was dying to get in front of the camera and start talking about sport and integrity. Yeah,
and as I say, we'll come on to that. Yeah, bending the spirit of sporting integrity and all that kind of stuff. What Dougie says there, Alex, you know, the difference between certain players and, you know, at the tail end of Gerrard in that game when we didn't really have anyone managing the team against Hibs to since Gio's arrived, you know, it all points to the impact that Gio's had since he's taken over. So that's 7 games in the league, you know, 6 clean sheets, 7 wins. You know, in terms of the improvement, it's off the scale compared to where we were before. You know, we looked vulnerable before, very inconsistent. Now we're just boom. As Dougie mentioned earlier on, the goal difference, which was quite significant at one point, the difference between us and Celtic, it's now down to we're only 1 behind them, and we missed an opportunity yesterday, I think, to either level it or go ahead. So you would have to say that his impact in the first 7 games has been tremendous. You know, there's no other way. I mean, I'm sure I've seen their stats saying it's the best start of any Rangers manager. You know, 7 games, 7 wins.
Aye, and I've no idea if it is, but I'll just sit here and go, yeah, that sounds right, you know, and run away if you're actually checking up to see who has had the best start as Rangers manager. But I can't think of
Alex, we're amateurs. It doesn't need to be right.
Exactly.
You know, as long as we've got content, that's all that matters.
The main thing is, remember, it was 6 games in a row we lost the first goal. No, that's 9 games in a row. We've scored the first goal. Even that's a wee kind of pop hit, a wee kind of thing to automatically hang on to and show what a difference he's made. We've never been behind in a game since he took over. We've conceded 1 equaliser, you know, against Lyon, and that's in Lyon in a European group stage. They're a Champions League team. It's been absolutely smashing, to the point where, as you know, Colin, I've got this kind of a perverse attitude where it's like I want to see a bit of struggle so I know that it's bedding in properly. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like it could be too good to be true. The players will never know, but there's, you know, we don't know what was happening at the beginning of the season. You know, was Steven Gerrard just jaded and he was looking for a new challenge, and that was communicating itself to the players. But there was definitely something going on, and I think Dougie, we were all the same, mate. We were all thinking, is Alan McGregor done here? That semi-final really did throw us the entire support for a wobbly, because we hadn't really seen anything like that from the team. And I think I have this theory that what has happened is they were determined to prove that Steven Gerrard wasn't the sole reason that they'd won 55. He wasn't that they could you know, go on without him. And I think they've messed with their own heads somehow in that game, because it was a really untypical performance from a great set of players. But Gio has come in and he's moved them up another level. And I'm still worried because the new manager bounce won't stop. We just keep doing brilliantly. Yeah. What I do like, though, is I think yesterday we saw the difference between yesterday's game and the game against Dundee United, who were in it was the same situation. Dundee United riddled with COVID, playing young players, you know, in a really bad situation. We're in a no-win situation, and we kind of struggled that day. And it was almost like, is that the low point? Is that the moment, you know, where, you know, the new manager bounce is worn off and it's just sheer determination? Because yesterday, as I say, we looked like the week we've had with Gio on the training field, the week the players have had to rest and get properly trained by Gio and his team, Dave Voss from ABC. We're going to, you know, it really did show yesterday. We didn't get the goals. You're right. That was a chance missed to rack up the goal difference. But they got the game won and never really looked like giving anything away. And they did it with a kind of level of professionalism that maybe was lacking in the Dundee United game. And this is the big frustration, and it's really difficult not to talk about, you know, the situation with the league, because I would have liked another couple of games quickly. You know, no matter who we're playing, I would just like to have seen what was happening before we go on a break. You know, and then when we come back to the break, obviously we're going to be missing players as well. So it's difficult to know how far Gio's going to be able to take it. But I think the difference has just been like night and day, and it's almost like his manner as well. I've always talked about this. He's quite cool, quite level-headed. As I say, Stevie G, love him. I do love Stevie Gerrard to bits. I always will. But he was always up for a fight. He was always kind of on it, a bit cheeky, whereas Gio is almost kind of dead behind the eyes at times. The opposite he was as a player to what he was like as a player.
Yeah.
He just looks like he is on it. He's constantly just thinking football, thinking tactics. Really cold. He's not going to get overexcited about anything. He's just making sure that team goes out there. And even the way, like, I didn't articulate it properly earlier on because I've had my first beer, so obviously that's been rattled. But the way the fullbacks, we've seen this thing, we're just getting used to, one fullback sits, another one goes forward under Gio. And that's because we've got Kamara sitting on his own to give a bit of extra protection. But yesterday, St Mirren said they're going to park the bus. So Gio's like, Barisic can hit the byline, but he's coming back. But James Tavernier is just going to sit on the right wing or the inside right position. And Tav had about three brilliant shots for outside the box yesterday. He's adapting to games, but it's not in a way that's so spectacular and so different. He's adapting to the opposition, but it's not in a way that confuses the players from the 4-3-3 they were playing all season under Gerrard. So he seems really intelligent, and also I think he's just what the players need just now. They've done the thing, they've got the 55 and the desperation and the emotion that came with needing to get that and then getting it, and we've now got this cool character who's in there just getting everything levelled out, and we should just be moving on to the next level. I say my frustration is I don't know if that's going to happen just yet.
The thing that's really stuck out for me, and I know Dougie mentioned a couple of things earlier on about the thing that's most impressed him. I think it was 13 games into the season in the league, 13, 14 games when Gerrard left, and we conceded 13 goals. We've had another 7 games and we've conceded 1. So,
well, that's it. Gerrard last season he lost 13 goals in the league, and it was a record. And then he's lost 13 goals in the league this season, then left. So it's quite remarkable. And we're right back to, Alan McGregor's had a couple of cracking saves under Gio. He's done well. But I think it's like yesterday, he had nothing to do.
Literally nothing. He'd have been as well sitting with me watching the shit stream for RTV.
Exactly. Somebody said that on Twitter that a fan could have had 500 Man fans in there if was in goals.
You just stole my punchline, Alex. That was my next joke.
Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
There you go.
But
right, guys. Onto the 500. Move away from the game yesterday and onto the sort of stuff that's surrounded it over the past week, all the sort of announcements and the moving of the winter break. So, I mean, the first stage of that, and I think we all kind of felt it was coming. I started to get the fear. I remember watching the highlights package for the Champions League on match day 6, the sort of last game of the group stages, and a few empty stadiums in places like Germany and Holland and stuff like that because of COVID. And it kind of took me back to like March 2020 when all this started. You'd sort of seen that happening elsewhere in Europe, and it felt like it was coming. So I don't think we were hugely surprised that there was going to be some announcement. But the 500 people, to go from full stadiums to 500 people, hospitality has also been sort of, I wouldn't say hammered, but they've got restrictions in place now. Back to the table service and all that kind of thing. Meanwhile, other industries like retail, I believe places like Braehead and Springburn absolutely mobbed. January sales have kicked off, all indoors. It does feel that certain industries, if we want to call that, Dougie, are being targeted here. And 500 fans, really, really disappointing.
Yeah, let's be honest, Colin. The picture of 500 fans sitting inside a 50,000-seater stadium made a mockery of the complete decision because, as you say, most season ticket holders who would regularly go to the game and sit outside. I mean, I'm not going to try and talk science here about COVID, right? We're not here to be science experts, but I tell you what, it's a lot safer sitting inside an outside stadium than it is going to the pub, which is what most supporters went and done with all their pals when they couldn't go to the game. And the ones who didn't go to the game or didn't go to the pub, as you say, they ended up getting dragged to the Braehead or Silverburn with their missus. And there is talk of places like Braehead being absolutely mobbed. I seen the Stenhousemuir chairman, Ian McMenemy, was in the Scotsman today saying... Yeah,
it's a very good piece in the Scotsman, actually.
Yeah, it was unusual for the Scotsman. But he was saying that he feels that Scottish football has been let down. and he wonders if there's something deeper at work. And it does definitely feel like football is an easy target for Nicola Sturgeon. And Newcastle are playing Man United right now on the telly. 150 miles down the road, there's a full capacity happening in England, and that's where politics becomes very frustrating right now. Is COVID more transmittable in Scotland than it is in England? No. So why is Nicola Sturgeon punishing football fans but allowing shoppers to continue to go about their business? I definitely agree with Ian McMenemy. I think football has been made a scapegoat right now, and it's an easy scapegoat for the SNP.
Alex, the whole cross-border thing, I don't even think you need to look at that. I would go back to July when there was rugby games going on at Murrayfield with 14,000 fans in it, and when Hearts applied to get fans in, I think they were only allowed like 500, 600, 700 in at the time. Now, I don't want to try and belittle the situation, because people have died, and it's the biggest thing that's happened in sort of my lifetime, in terms of, I've always viewed it as it's kind of like my World War II, if you know what I mean. This is, this must be what it was like. A similar sort of feeling as to going through the Second World War, having to live your life differently and a lot of fear and all that kind of thing. And people have lost, loved ones and family members and all that kind of thing. So I don't want to do it down. And I certainly wouldn't want to be in the people that are making these decisions, whether it be UK government, devolved governments. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes and making these decisions. But I think a lot of supporters, it's just the inconsistency that goes here. So, go back to July, that game at Tynecastle, only 500 supporters allowed in. When I went to one of the games at Ibrox, when it was a very restricted capacity in July, there was no food stalls open. It was very much get into your seat and don't talk to anybody else, mask on, sit. Meanwhile, at Murrayfield, they're queued 10 deep at the bar. You know what I mean? To get a pint, and you're just like, well, does the science, does this virus know? Well, that's rugby. We'll not attack them, but when it's football, we will. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from. And it just, I don't get me wrong, I was expecting some sort of announcement in terms of capacities and stuff like that. Because as I said, watching the games in the Champions League and seeing empty stadiums there, it was just how it went from full stadium to 500. St Mirren and Celtic 2-3 days ago, capacity, and you're thinking, well, if this is a health emergency, surely everything stops now. That's it, right? We need to stop now. But no, it's like 2-3 days, right? And then that's it. Come Saturday, boom, and I think that's what frustrates supporters. I think that's what makes them get annoyed and get angry and make them feel that they're being treated differently.
Yeah, and it's two tiers of politics. You've got, party politics. You've got, I don't have any time for the regimes at Holyrood or Westminster just now, but it's the way it's easily used by them. Football is easily used, like political football, and they've done this before. It's not just COVID. I remember the game. What was it, 2010, 2011 season? With the Celtic put us out the Scottish Cup in the replay. Then it got a bit towsy at Parkhead. Ali McCoist and Neil Lennon had their famous kind of tete-a-tete, bit of handbags. 60,000 folk at Parkhead just coming, oh, what's happening? All right, and all went home. And next day on Sky Sports News, Alex Salmond was doing a State of the Nation address from Butte House about the toxicity of the Old Firm game. It was like, I've given a fact there were 2 guys get sent off and there was no violence in the streets or anything. And it's just, I've always thought that's just, and all governments do this. I know a lot of folk at their support is. I'm not saying anything against any particular party, but I think it gets used to deflect, because there's nothing. In Scotland in particular, if you want to get attention for anything, just attach Rangers and Celtic to it, and immediately you've got a kind of populist interest in the topic. We've then got the football politics that comes in after that as to how you react to whatever the government or whatever the Scottish government are telling us to do. So there's a difference going on obviously just now between the Westminster reaction and the Holyrood reaction, and anybody who watches politics knows a lot of that is deliberate, because the Holyrood government wants to be seen to be different from the Westminster government, just wants to be seen to be different from anything coming from England. And really it should be, as we're saying, just the primary thing just now is to save folks' lives. And there's a lot worse going on, as we say, than football fans going into a stadium and breathing in the fresh air. I don't think this thing's... Maybe I'm being completely naive here. People are still dying from it. It's terrible. It's multiplying. But I'm hoping that it's so many people have been treble jabbed now, myself included. We've got 3 jabs, and hopefully that they're saying that the variants get less virulent as more people kind of can catch it and are resistant to it. That's the extent of my scientific knowledge. But I think we could be back at the stadiums come February, March. Might not be, maybe a pipe dream. Maybe the season's over in terms of fans being in stadiums. But I'm quite up for a circuit breaker. I think if we can do something to stop this virus, but as you say, the whole of society's got to do the same. Just to target fans at a football stadium just seems absolutely crazy. We've all been in situations, as you say, shopping centres, pubs, everything that's far worse, than sitting at Ibrox.
Well, I'll give you an example that I was in. I went to get my booster a couple of weeks ago, and I had to queue. And I actually walked out. It was that bad. The queue was, honest to God, it was a mile long in a small corridor, low roof. Hundreds of people all crammed into this corridor queuing for their jab. And I'm just like, this is a COVID nightmare. And this was before the announcement was made about restrictions in stadiums and stuff like that. But I left just because, one, I wasn't prepared to wait the length of time. I had an appointment. I can't remember what it was for. It was like 5 o'clock or something. It was around about tea time. But I was told, no, you just need to queue. But there was people in the queue who didn't have an appointment. Aye. So I was like, well, what's the point of me having an appointment to come down at 5 o'clock when all you're asking me to do is join a queue that's a mile long in a corridor and there's a COVID nightmare. So I chucked it. I was just like, no, I'm not waiting. I'll wait until it's died down a wee bit, because I'm not taking an hour and a half out of my life to stand in a small corridor that's a COVID nightmare. But it's frustrating. Don't get me wrong. I don't take this lightly, and it's I've got my wife works for the NHS, and she's told me some horrific stories in terms of the stuff that she's had to put up with and all that kind of stuff. But it does feel that there's inconsistencies in the guidance, and I completely understand fans' frustrations with it.
My wife's a teacher, and suddenly teachers are apparently immune. They're apparently immune to COVID. COVID doesn't spread in schools. We all know children are super spreaders of everything, because every time my wife goes back to school after the summer holidays, I'll get a flu within a month. They're coming back. You know what I mean? Within a week of her starting back. And that's, it's not to do with the wains. Can you help people to get childcare while they go to work, basically? So it's. I think we're in the same situation.
Oh, you're cutting out, Eck. You're cutting out a wee bit there. You're cutting it. Sorry, missed the last point there. Dougie, we'll move away from the announcement in terms of, the government announcement in terms of the restrictions and all the rest of it, and move on to the SPFL's reaction, which felt very 2007, 2008, and it felt very like one club was leading it. All of a sudden the winter break is they want to pull it forward, and fans mean everything and all that kind of thing. The same club who was happy not to play games at all, the last sort of 6-7 games of a couple of seasons back, are all of a sudden saying, we need fans in the ground and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of get that, but the whole, everything about it, and I had to laugh yesterday at Dundee making a statement saying, we're in the huff because they wouldn't postpone our game because we've got loads of players with COVID. Well, they voted for this. They voted for this scenario knowing that they were told by Neil Doncaster that there is no wiggle room at the other end of the season. That's it. There's very little windows to rearrange games. So if you vote for this, you need to just play the games. One game in, and Dundee are kicking off saying, this isn't fair. And you're just like, well, you voted for this, and actually, did you actually think about what you're voting for? And the whole thing just feels, as I said, it feels very 2007, 2008, that whole time that when we asked for, a bit of wiggle room in terms of rescheduling fixtures, we couldn't get it. This time, we can just change it like that.
That's the issue that I've got just now, Colin. Neil Doncaster is the main point of contact for the SPFL, but he's there to represent the clubs. And the issue that we've got is that 10 clubs voted in favour of bringing the winter break forward and only 2 voted against. It seems to be right now that whenever Rangers put forward a case, it's always, look, it's big bad Rangers. And Celtic and everyone else seems to always vote against whatever Rangers are voting for. To hell with the consequences of it. And I think what we've seen very quickly with the Dundee scenario is, the penny dropping of actually what they've just voted for, because, we have a very real scenario right now where fans might not return when football returns. I think the first game back is the 16th of January. I'd be surprised if stadiums are at full capacity on the 16th of January. But, Neil Doncaster made a very blasé comment around, if that's the case, then we'll just continue to play games as of the 16th of January with 500 supporters, as if that wasn't an option at the moment. But for the 10 clubs, including Dundee, who have voted in favour of bringing the winter break forward, I have no sympathy if they lose players through COVID, because I think it was very well known at the voting that there's no remaining fixtures. If there's any clubs that are suffering with COVID, there is no wriggle room. We have used the wriggle room right now to bring the winter break forward. So if there's any clubs suffering with COVID situations, there's no room for postponement, and therefore the game must go ahead. And I think, what was it with Dundee? They had 11 players fit and 2 goalkeepers. Or 3 goalkeepers, should I say, which is basically what the criteria is. It needs to be 13 first team players available. And was it something like 8 players must be over the age of 18? You're going to see, and I don't even know if Dundee have, not to mention an under-21s team. I don't even know if they've got an under-18s team. It's something that seems to have been been sacrificed by a lot of the SPFL teams because of financial restrictions. So, you're talking about teams like Dundee who struggle to name players to play their games. The email probably get lost in their spam somewhere. But yeah, I've been here before for them. Yeah, but I've got one last point, which is kind of digressing a little bit, and it's a serious point to be made, because we all watched CJ Novo's latest update on his podcast, and one of the things that Craig mentioned was football is the only thing. Rangers is the only thing bringing him joy right now. And we were chatting about it in our WhatsApp. I was chatting about it to a number of mates in WhatsApp, and I was probably staggered by the amount of my mates, including Gary, that resonated with it. Where for a lot of guys, Gary's got a newborn baby, working from home. Going to Ibrox was his only release. Going to Ibrox, being with his family, being with his mates, was his only release from imprisonment in their own homes at times. And I was probably a bit staggered by some of the responses from some of my mates that really resonated with Craig, saying that, when you take football away from us, they've got nothing else right now that's kind of bringing them joy right now. And the Scottish Government and the Scottish football authorities have made this decision right now, potentially for the right reasons from the government's perspective, but the football authorities, I don't see it. Alex and I had a conversation on Twitter around no fans inside. As football on TV is better than no football at all. And I think there's a lot of decisions being made right now with fans in mind, apparently. For me, there's no fans in mind right now. I'd be surprised, I said, about fans being back in the stadium by the 16th of January. No football is not something we want. We want to be able to watch football, even if it's on the telly. I think this is going to have a massive impact on mental health, particularly of men. And my very serious point to kind of conclude my monologue is, please, I urge everyone who's listening and watching along just now to look after themselves at the moment. Winter's typically a bad month for mental health anyway. My DMs are open. If there's anybody that's struggling with mental health and just wants to talk to someone, the Gersnet community are all open. Feel free to message us if anyone's struggling right now. And hopefully, when football does return, we can be inside Ibrox again, supporting our team with our mates and our family.
Alex, what Dougie's saying there in terms of, obviously the impact on mental health and stuff like that. But this isn't about fans, I don't think. This is very much led by one club's desire not to play a particular fixture at this particular moment in time. I think we've been here before, as I said. And, for a club that really bands about sporting integrity at will at times, you have to question the sporting integrity in a club saying, well, we want to rearrange a fixture which will allow us to get players which are currently out injured back, and will also allow us to get reinforcements through the door. So we're going to buy, they keep on talking about these 3 Japanese players that are going to bring in January. Those will now all be available for the game against us. I think it's the 2nd of February the game takes place now. And we may be missing players. It depends on how far certain countries get in African Cup of Nations, but we could now be missing several key players for that fixture, whereas they will have key players back and will have added to their numbers. So where is the sporting integrity in that?
And the other thing is, the way Joe Aribo's playing yesterday, we could have players just sold. Celtic's squad cannot get any worse in the transfer window. Ours can. They can but improve Celtic during the January transfer window. We could lose, seriously key players. And it's the irony, let's call it the irony, because I think Rangers probably behind the scenes maybe came to the agreement that if Celtic are getting a go at a COVID decimated St Mirren, we want to go at them as well. But nevertheless, the talk has been about we need to have stadiums with fans in them. Celtic haven't played at Parkhead empty. Rangers have. Straight away, we've played at an empty Ibrox, and Celtic haven't. You need to go back to the actual, looking at this from the outside, I just look like the classic ranting nutcase that I never wanted Rangers fans to become, that I never wanted to be. There's a whole debate within the Rangers support, which is framed around how you use the phrase dignified silence. If you kind of spit it out, you think Rangers should be saying a lot more about these things. Like me, I actually like the dignified silence thing, but it's a massive dichotomy. How do you call out what you see as basically cheating, moral or otherwise? How do you call out what you see as cheating without sounding like a bit of a cheat yourself? When it's, when the whole of the league, or 10 out of 12 have agreed to go with this. I think this is actually the least. It's because of recent history. It's because of the Celtic that we've been up against since Peter Lawwell was involved with Celtic. I always see it as, we've always, Rangers fans and Celtic fans are always going to have a real paranoia about each other, a real obsession with each other. They're going to see both clubs as a kind of, confirmation bias thing. You're going to see both clubs. You're going to see the opposite club in the worst possible light most of the time, and you've got to have a really hard look at yourself when it comes to these kind of things. And I'm trying to see what is it that we were getting out of this. I need to be honest with myself so I don't sound like the classic paranoid Celtic fan talking about Rangers. And we wanted to play these games just now because we would get Celtic 2nd of January. We're on form. They've got a lot of injuries. But basically, that's the fixture schedule. We're messing with this. There's no need to stop playing football because of COVID. And as Dougie is saying, you absolutely spot on, Dougie, well said, sir, and also much love out to CJ Novo, an absolute gentleman. And terrible to see a fellow like that who gives so much joy having a hard time himself. So I'd like to see him back as quick as possible, and I hope he's all right. But it absolutely 100% does affect the mental health not to have football to follow. I forgot there was no crowds last season. Just watching the games on Rangers TV or on Sky or on BT or whatever. Just, if you love your team, you don't care. You do care. You want to be there more than anything else. That's the thing you want. But ultimately, you're supporting that team and you want to see that team doing well. We're getting the Jock Stein thing quoted at us these days about football's nothing without the fans. I know. But the fans are there. We've all paid for our season tickets. We paid for season tickets last season. And we watched the football via television. The fans can be there now via technology. The celebrations last season, they were off the scale for us. It meant the world to us last season. The fact there was no fans there, and the fact we couldn't get into the stadium made almost zero difference to how much we loved our team and how much we enjoyed that season. It's something you look back on with a bit of regret, but the game can go on and the fans can still be involved. They can still see the games happening live, and it really does affect your mental health. But that's not something you would posit as an argument. It's when we're having like Alan Burrows of Motherwell and Celtic coming back at us with this lifeblood of the game. There's always got to be a little kind of euphemism, a little kind of 67 syllable phrase that's really emotive and really emotionally blackmailing and quite sickening. And it always comes out within 24 hours of something like this happening. I remember when we all remember we're thinking about Phil O'Donnell dying, and that fixture being postponed, which would be absolutely fine if the Dundee United, players who were there when Phil O'Donnell sadly passed away that day, if they'd been allowed to cancel their next fixture, they guys were traumatised, had to go out and play their next game. Tommy Burns passed away at the end of that season, an even bigger Celtic legend, and there was no desire to cancel Celtic's next league fixture because that was the one they were going to win the league.
Yeah,
that's up to Celtic if they want to do that kind of thing. But I think it's just when you have a team who were quite happy to curtail the season, not play football matches at all, fans or no fans, and be awarded a league title in a boardroom. There was no talk then about we've got to have fans in the grounds. It doesn't count for anything.
The game, yeah.
You know,
they managed it in England. They managed to finish the season down in England. Do you know what I mean? So
Liverpool were going for the most emotional title probably of their history. A team that's won European Cups, but hasn't been able to win their own league. And Klopp was saying, if this season's got to be called off, it's got to be called off. People's lives are more important. Juventus were also going for 9 in a row, an ongoing Italian record at the time. Juventus like a bit of match fixing. They were saying, we're not taking this title. This has got to get played on the park. They had a badge in 30 Sol Campo of it. They're all about playing it on the park. That's a thing for them now. But Celtic, it was just, no, we'll take this title, thanks, and we'll celebrate it. We'll parade this trophy, and it just goes against the spirit of the game. And I look at myself, and I know we'll get Celtic fans. You're always going to back your team. You're always going to naturally, instinctively want to back your own club. As I say, I've got to look at my own bias in this as well. And they're obviously going on about the whole thing about Rangers don't even exist as far as you're concerned, but it's never seemed to have stopped them selling it their away end at Ibrox. But for me, it just looks like moral, ethical, sportsmanship, cheating. It's just cheating. When you continually mess with the fixture schedule, when you don't want Rangers to get the time to play a European final in 2008, when you want to cut short a season, when you want to hold on the Scottish Cup, to the following season so you can get a chance to win another treble, and then you want to bring at a time when, as Dougie was saying, as we're all saying, we should be getting in as many fixtures as possible just now. We should be using the winter break that was coming up to get more. We should have been bringing the fixtures forward, no the break, to get the season played. Because we've been afflicted by COVID this season, but that doesn't get mentioned. You would actually forget. There's people on Twitter, Celtic fans, saying, funny how Rangers never get hit with the COVID the last time we beat them.
I saw a good tweet the other day there because Steven Gerrard is obviously, I think he's tested positive recently, and they had to miss Aston Villa's game against Chelsea yesterday. So Gary Mack took the team. I saw this Celtic fan tweeting, well seen that their DUP COVID testing facility in Northern Ireland doesn't do Aston Villa, and Stevie G now gets COVID, and you're like, mate, he literally beat you sitting in his living room on a laptop, you know what I mean? Because he wasn't allowed to go to the game because he had COVID. And they just live in another dimension. It's
extenuating circumstances. The minute there's any extenuating circumstances, Celtic seize it and use it. Now, listen, this is actually the least bad. There's great reasons for doing what's been done just now. A lot of clubs will be financially hit, and I think that's part of it. When Celtic's motivation, I think they're trying to kind of lay financial seeds to us. They want the 30-40 million it's going to come from getting next season's Champions League. If we get it, we're then getting right back to being on a level footing with Celtic in financial terms. We've really caught them up in all aspects of Scottish football. So if you're going to get super paranoid about it, these are kind of conspiracy theories, that I would be mocking if they're coming from the other side. But we just have to look at the behaviour. We have to look at what's happened in recent years from Celtic, and it's a decision of all the clubs in Scotland except ourselves in Ross County. It's a decision of all the clubs in the top flight. So we don't want to be too kind of this is a straight out and out conspiracy. And as we say, we might end up we're actually in a better nick when it comes to the 2nd of February than we are just now. It might end up benefiting us as well. But when it's just a continual one club being at the centre of continually manipulating fixtures until it always comes out in their favour. It has to be called out. And if I heard my Giovanni Van Bronckhorst or any of our directors talking the way I'm talking just now, I would be embarrassed. I don't want Rangers people talking like that, talking like this. And that is the dichotomy for us as a club. And that's something I think we've had to deal with this century, is how do you react to this kind of stuff from Celtic without becoming like Celtic?
Yeah, well, we're not, because we're better than them, let's face it. In every possible way. Guys, looking at the time, kind of running over a wee bit. So just quickly, Dougie, just going into the January window, what's your hopes? Just to maintain the squad that we have? Or, I mean, I know Gio has already said that he has a strong idea of what he wants to happen in January. So do you think players will go and another couple in?
Yeah, I think top priority must be to keep our key players. I think in the past couple of weeks we've seen guys like Barisic, Kamara and Aribo linked with moves south of the border. Not to mention the contract situation with Connor Goldson. I think if we receive any offers that kind of meet or exceed our asking price of our players, we will accept them. And I think that has to be a concern, particularly for Aribo. I think Aribo will gain a lot of attention south of the border, given his performances of late. As I said earlier on, clear player of the year for me so far. But I have every faith in Ross Wilson at the moment, having a clear shortlist drawn up that if something does happen and we do move on a player, going back to Aribo, I think if Aribo leaves Rangers, he'll be breaking all sorts of records for highest transfer sale in our history. And I think it's currently held by our manager. It's either our manager or it's Alan Hutton that currently holds the record. I'm not too sure. But I think if Aribo does leave, it'll be for serious money, around the 20 million mark, which would allow us to seriously invest that. But there is a lot of names being mentioned at the moment of players that we are rumoured with. Names like Wesley Howitt, who's a central defender that plays for Anderlecht. He worked with Ross Wilson at Southampton, potentially Connor Goldson's long-term replacement. But there's other guys like John Souttar being mentioned. I do expect some French players to move on, and one French player will possibly be Jack Simpson. It makes a lot of sense to bring in Souttar, who's out of contract in the summer, and contributes towards the Scottish domestically trained criteria, which is always an issue for us in Europe. But there's other names. There's Danilo Duecki, who was a central defender linked under Gerrard out of contract in the summer as well. We were linked with guys like Joe Rothwell, who's a central midfielder at Blackburn, and Jed Wallace, who was at Millwall under Gerrard. But what will be interesting for me is whether we'll continue to go for that type of player under Van Bronckhorst, or whether we'll move for a different calibre and a different type of player, particularly those of Dutch heritage or certainly played in the Dutch leagues. One name that came up a couple of weeks ago was Xavi Simons, who is a young player at Paris Saint-Germain. I say a young player at Paris Saint-Germain, that doesn't give him the justice that he deserves. I think he's regarded as one of Paris Saint-Germain's top players, top youth players. And if we were able to attract a player of that quality and that calibre, it would be a huge signing for us. And I think it shows potentially the level of player that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is looking at. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with transfers. But for me, I'd prefer us to keep our key players, Colin, a bit of continuity for the next 6 months of the season, and then possibly allow Gio to kind of lay his stamp on the team. But one thing that Alex said earlier on, this was the first week that Van Bronckhorst has had on the training pitch with our players, able to get his ideas across. We're going to have a 2-3 week period now of that once the players return from holiday. I'm excited to see what kind of reaction the players have when Van Bronckhorst is able to get his ideas across on the training pitch. And hopefully as we return from the post-winter break, we return flying in the form that we are currently at, and we move into 2022 and achieve what we all want, and that's title 56.
And on that, Alex, very quickly, 2021, a great year, for Rangers. Not all great, we had some sad moments as well. We won 55, and I think that's the main thing. That's the sort of pinnacle of the year. We lost Stevie G. He went to Aston Villa, and I think that all, it was a bit of a shock, and it all impacted on us. And I think Gio coming in has sort of softened that blow, because he's came in. We've seen him come in and improve the team in the first sort of 7 games. Obviously, the passing of Walter Smith is the low point of the year. That was really sad. Such a huge icon in the club. So a big year for Rangers 2021. Very, very quickly, what are your hopes for 2022?
56, as Dougie said, 56 the main thing, Colin, get that title won, because that takes us into the Champions League. I just hope that we're all in the stadium for the night we pump Manchester City and the night we pump Bayern Munich in the group stages. I would hate if we wanted to see that, and both cups. I want us to win every domestic trophy in the year 2022. Get that Scottish Cup won, and also, for God's sake, Rangers, we are still the League Cup kings. Get that bloody League Cup won. I think that the worst thing about Steven Gerrard leaving this season was, in all respects, I was pretending to be mature about it, Colin. I'm pretending to be that this was going to happen. I was ready for this. It was fine, but the timing,
the nature of how we done it was poor. I think
the League Cup. We didn't. The only thing that bothered me, we didn't get a presser. We did. The first time I knew Steven Gerrard for certain was leaving was a picture of him holding an Aston Villa jersey.
Yeah,
just give us a presser, Steven, before you go. I maybe kidding myself on his PR wouldn't let him do that. But I'm going back to when Graham Souness had the guts to sit beside David Murray and get slagged for going to Liverpool. But I think we deserved a wee presser. That was the thing with the bad taste. But I'm trying to be mature about it. But I realise that I haven't watched a single Steven Gerrard Aston Villa game, even the highlights on Match of the Day too, except the night we get beat at home by Man City, because that meant he hadn't won his first 3 games, but Gio had. So I'm not as mature about it. I'm not as mature about it as I'm making it.
Yeah.
But, I just hope that the COVID is under control and everybody can stay healthy, and that Rangers just go from strength to strength.
And on that, guys, I think we'll call it time there. We've sort of ran over the hour a wee bit there, but that's fine. It's the last show of the year. We're allowed to do that, get some extra content out there for the guys. So a big thanks to Alex and Dougie for their contributions there. Great stuff as always. The next show, I'm just going to pull it up here because the gaffer has put it on the chat. It will be out on the 16th of January, I believe. Ross is hosting, I'm on, and Stuart Weir will be on as well. We were live tonight, guys, as always. We were live tonight, but tomorrow the pod will be available to download and stream on a variety of platforms, including the Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, all the usual places. And as always, guys, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Final point I want to make tonight, as I said earlier on, 2021, a huge year for Rangers. We won 55. Steven Gerrard left us, went to Aston Villa after securing 55. We've seen Gio coming in. We've seen the sad passing of Walter Smith. And we're about to move into 2022, a new year. Through all that happened through 2021, we were with you. Gersnet was there. We covered it all, free and independent content. We're trying to improve that content and give you some more stuff. We'll continue to do that in 2022. So please keep watching, keep joining, keep subscribing. I'll lift a wee beer to you all. Have a happy new year, a great 2022 when it comes. We are the people. Until then, bye for now.